A racist teacher shaves Shaq's daughter hair for fun, but what Shaq did to that teacher shocked everyone. The clock ticked loudly in room 214. The air felt heavy, the kind of humidity that clung to your skin and made every fabric feel tighter. The projector hummed as a blurry frog dissection video played on the whiteboard. Kids scrolled their Chromebooks, half distracted, half dozing. Amira O'Neill sat in the second row, her posture upright, shoulders drawn in slightly. She never slouched, never spoke unless called on. Not because she wasn't bright, she was, but being the only black girl in that particular 7th grade class at Westridge Academy meant survival, sometimes meant shrinking. Her long, tightly coiled curls were pulled back today into a soft puffball, secured with a lavender scrunchie. Her mom helped her do it that morning, adding leave-in conditioner and whispering something about how her hair was a crown, not a costume. Then came Mr. Callan. Middle-aged, crooked tie, receding hairline, but always talking about style. His voice was clipped, like he thought he was still on stage. He called it playful teasing, but everyone knew it was something else, especially if you didn't look like him. He was pacing now, hands behind his back. Then, without warning, he stopped by Amira's desk. "Whoa," he said, loud enough to make half the room glance up. "Look at this mane. Is it real?" Amira blinked up at him. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "Your hair," he said, grinning. "Looks like you brought the whole jungle with you today." A few boys snickered. One girl looked away. Amira's throat tightened. "It's my real hair." Mr. Callan leaned down and wagged a finger. "You sure? Or did you just borrow Beyoncé's wig this morning?" More laughs. But not from everyone. Some students watched in silent discomfort. "I don't think that's funny," Amira said, her voice almost a whisper. "Oh, lighten up," he replied, rolling his eyes. "You kids are way too sensitive." He walked away, but not far. He circled back. Then, in what felt like slow motion, he reached toward the supply bin on his desk, grabbed the school-issued scissors, and walked back toward Amira. "What are you—" she started. "Let's give the class a laugh," he said with a smirk. And before anyone could process what was happening, before a single hand could rise in protest, snip! The lavender scrunchie dropped to the floor. A thick coil of Amira's hair fluttered down like a fallen leaf and landed beside it. The room went dead silent. Mr. Callan laughed nervously. "It's just hair, sweetheart. It'll grow back." Amira didn't move. Her lip quivered. Then she stood, pushed her chair back, and ran. Out of the classroom, down the hall, her small hands covering her head. Silence clung to the room like fog. No one knew what to say. No one, except one wide-eyed boy in the back corner who finally broke the quiet. "Wait, isn't her dad like Shaquille O'Neal?" The nurse's office was dimly lit, the soft hum of a desk fan the only sound in the room. Amira sat on the exam table, legs swinging just above the floor, her head bowed. Her curls, her crown, were uneven now, a jagged chunk missing from the back. She hadn't said a word since she walked in. Nurse Daniel stood a few feet away, holding the lavender scrunchie in one hand, and the fallen curl in the other. Her face was pale. Her eyes didn't know where to land. "Amira," she said softly, Can I call your mother?" Amira didn't respond. She just gave a tiny nod. 2 blocks away, her mother, Layla O'Neill, was at her laptop, finishing up a remote consulting call. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She ignored it. Then it buzzed again. Something told her to answer. "Hello?" "Mrs. O'Neill," the voice on the other end said. "This is Nurse Daniels from Westridge Middle." Layla immediately sat upright. "Is Amira okay?" There was a pause. "Physically? Yes. Emotionally?" I don't think so. Layla arrived in 20 minutes. She didn't come inside like a storm. She didn't scream or shout. But the way she walked, controlled, fast, shoulders square, sent a ripple through the front office. Her heels echoed like a warning. "Where is she?" she asked the receptionist, who silently pointed toward the nurse's room. Layla pushed open the door. Amira looked up and broke. The moment her mother stepped in, the brave face she'd held all afternoon collapsed. She buried her face in Layla's chest, sobbing so hard her shoulders shook. Layla held her hand stroking what was left of her daughter's hair. She didn't ask questions. She just listened to the broken pieces of the story tumble out between gasps. "He cut it. He said it was funny. Everyone laughed, Mom. I told him no." Layla's eyes slowly filled with tears, but her face remained still. Nurse Daniels stepped closer. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see it happen. I was told she needed me after the fact, but I've already submitted an incident report, privately." "Where is this teacher?" Layla asked flatly. "Still teaching," Nurse Daniels said bitterly. "Principal Monroe is, handling it." Layla clenched her jaw. 20 minutes later, she sat in the principal's office across from Principal Monroe, a tightly wound woman in her 50s with pearl earrings and a voice trained in calm PR responses. "We want to first say how sorry we are that Amira experienced—" "He cut her hair off," Layla interrupted. "Not experienced. He assaulted her. That's battery." Monroe held up her palms. "There's no need to be confrontational. Mr. Callan says it was an unfortunate misunderstanding, that he was joking." "Let me be absolutely clear," Layla snapped, leaning forward. "If my husband had been the one to come here today, this wouldn't be a conversation. There'd already be a lawyer in the parking lot." Monroe blinked. "Your husband?" Layla's mouth curved into a cold smile. "You've heard of him," she said. "Shaquille O'Neal." Silence. The principal shifted uncomfortably. Her professional armor cracked just slightly. "I see," Monroe said, suddenly nervous. "I'm going to take my daughter home," Layla continued, "and you are going to make a formal apology, publicly, to her. And then we'll decide what happens next." That night at home, Amira sat curled up on her bed, face buried in her pillow. Her room was dark except for the soft blue glow of a fish tank across the room. Her phone buzzed. A FaceTime call. Dad. She stared at the screen, then pressed decline. She couldn't face him. Not like this. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Then she typed, "Don't tell Dad, please, not yet," and hit send. Downstairs, Layla sat alone at the kitchen table. She stared at her phone for a long time. Then, she slowly tapped his name. Shaq. Incoming call. The phone rang once. Twice. "Layla?" came his deep, warm voice. "Shaq," she said. And for a moment, her voice broke. "You need to come. Now." By 8:03 the next morning, the mood at Westridge Academy was off. Teachers whispered by the copy machine. Students checked their phones, sharing hushed murmurs and TikTok screenshots. Something was brewing, though no one could quite put a name on it. Until they heard the footsteps. Heavy, measured, powerful. A rhythm you don't forget once you've heard it. Shaquille O'Neal had arrived. And not in a limo. Not with a camera crew. No entourage. Just Shaq. Black hoodie pulled low. Hands in his pockets. Shoulders like twin boulders. Face unreadable. He walked through the front doors without speaking. The security guard stood, mouth half open, unsure whether to salute or hide. Shaq gave him a small nod. Straight to the office. The secretary nearly dropped her coffee when he entered. "Can I help you, Mr. O'Neal?" "I'm here for Principal Monroe," he said. Voice low but steady. "She knows why." Inside the principal's office, Monroe was mid-call when she glanced up and froze. Shaq stepped inside and closed the door behind him. She hung up, slowly. Mr. O'Neill, she stammered, rising. Shaq didn't sit. He didn't even blink. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the lavender scrunchie, the one Layla had given him last night, and placed it on the edge of her desk. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. Monroe's throat bobbed. "Yes, I was told." She came home crying, curled up in her bed, wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't even let me see her hair. You know how long it took her to love her curls? How many nights my wife sat with her, brushing through knots, teaching her that her hair was beautiful? Silence. Shaq stepped closer. Then one of your teachers, some grown man with a god complex, thought it'd be funny to grab scissors and humiliate her. On purpose, in front of her class. Monroe nodded nervously. Mr. O'Neill, I assure you, it's being handled. Mr. Callan has been placed on temporary leave. Temporary? Shaq repeated, eyes narrowing. While we investigate the full... Do you know what would happen if I walked into a classroom and cut a white student's hair for fun? Her eyes dropped. I'd be in cuffs before I hit the parking lot, Shaq said. You know it, I know it, and every kid in that room knows it. He leaned forward, voice lowering like a storm pulling in. I'm not here for headlines. I don't want this to be a viral clip. I want justice. Real, quiet, permanent justice. You handle him, or I will. Meanwhile, in a hallway near the 7th grade wing, Amira stood outside her classroom, hair tucked under a beanie, clutching her books. She hadn't gone in yet. Some students avoided eye contact, but a few stared. One girl, Megan, whispered, I heard your dad's here. Amira shrugged. Is it true? Megan asked. Did Mr. Callan really cut your hair? Amira looked away. Then someone else added, He's in trouble, right? Your dad's gonna beat him up? Amira's voice was quiet, but firm. He doesn't need to. My dad doesn't throw fists anymore. He builds consequences. And just then, the hallway filled with a new tension. Mr. Callan was walking toward them, disheveled, pale, holding a box of his desk supplies. He didn't make eye contact with any students. He froze when he saw Amira. She stood still. He opened his mouth like he might say something. Maybe an apology, maybe an excuse. But then, he saw the figure behind her. Shaq, arms folded. Gaze, steady, not angry. Worse, disappointed. Callan's lips clamped shut. He lowered his eyes and walked right past them, out of the school, under the weight of silence. Amira finally looked up at her father. Daddy, she said softly. You didn't yell? No, Shaq said gently. Didn't have to. She gave a weak smile. You scare people. I protect people. She blinked away, sudden tears. Shaq crouched low, pulled the beanie from her head, and looked her right in the eyes. Your hair is beautiful, Amira. Just like your mama said. Don't ever let anybody treat it like a joke. You hear me? She nodded. Now, he said, offering his hand. You ready to walk in that class and own it? Amira took a breath, took his hand, and walked forward. The news spread before the first bell even rang. Mr. Callan's gone. Shaq came to school. Principal Monroe looked like she'd seen a ghost. By lunch, the whole school knew. By 3 p.m., parents were calling the front office. Some furious, some confused, some finally relieved. But one thing was missing. The apology. Not from the school. Not from the district. Not even from Callan. And for Layla O'Neill, that silence was louder than any insult. That evening, the O'Neills sat quietly around the dinner table. Amira picked at her food. Her curls were now trimmed and shaped with the help of Layla's friend, a local stylist who knew how to work miracles. But her confidence was still bruised. Shaq sat back, fork in hand, eyes scanning his daughter's face. "I'm proud of you," he said gently. Amira looked up. "Why?" "You walked back in, head up, even when you wanted to hide." She shrugged. "Didn't feel like I had a choice." "You always got a choice," Shaq replied. "But courage is doing it anyway." Layla sat across from them, phone beside her plate, notifications buzzing. "Still nothing from the school board," she said. "No press release. No call. Not even an email." Shaq didn't answer. He was staring off, jaw tight. Then he stood up, walked to the kitchen and pulled open his laptop. "What are you doing?" Layla asked. He looked at her and said calmly, "If they won't speak up, I will." The next morning, a video appeared on Shaquille O'Neal's Instagram. No music, no filter, just him. In a hoodie, sitting in his daughter's room. He held up the lavender scrunchie. "This belonged to my daughter," he began. "She's 12, bright, kind, smarter than I ever was at her age. She loves science. She loves art. And she loves her curls." He paused. "Last week, a teacher decided her hair was a joke, took scissors, cut it, called it harmless fun, humiliated her in front of her class." Shaq's voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. "I'm not here to rant. I'm here to remind folks that power comes with responsibility. And when you teach children, especially black children, you don't just teach math or grammar. You teach them how the world sees them. You teach them whether they matter." He looked directly into the lens. "And when you stay silent after hurting one of them, you're teaching them something too." The screen went black. In less than an hour, the video had 5 million views. By nightfall, it hit every major outlet: CNN, TMZ, The Washington Post. "Protect Black Girls" trended for 2 days straight. At West Ridge Academy, things changed fast. Parents held meetings. Students started showing up with natural hair out, proud. Teachers began attending anti-bias training sessions, voluntarily. But Callan? He vanished. No apology, no public statement. Just a quiet resignation and a sealed HR file. 1 week later, Amira stood in front of her class. It was her turn to give a short speech on someone who inspires you. She stepped to the front, nervous at first. Then she began. "My hero is someone big, really big, like size 22 shoe big." The class laughed. "But not just because of that. He's my hero because he listens. He protects. He doesn't yell. He speaks truth. And even when people ignore the problem, he makes sure it's seen. My dad taught me something important." She paused. "That being strong doesn't mean being loud. It means being brave, even when no one claps for it." Silence. Then applause. Not loud, but genuine. Amira smiled. Her curls glowed under the classroom lights. A full month had passed since Mr. Callan quietly disappeared from West Ridge Academy. The video Shaq posted was still being shared, quoted, and dissected. But Amira didn't care about trending hashtags anymore. She just wanted her peace back. Some days were better than others. Some days, she felt invisible again, in a good way. But there were still moments, like when her classmates stared a little too long, or when teachers chose their words too carefully, like she was made of glass. And then came the letter. It arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, not emailed, not texted, hand-delivered, no return address. Just her name, written carefully in blue ink. Amira O'Neal. She opened it on the walk home, Layla trailing behind her with groceries. Amira's steps slowed as she read. Her face shifted. Brows tightened, eyes welled. "What is it?" Layla asked gently, peering over her daughter's shoulder. Amira didn't answer at first. She just handed it to her mother. Layla read silently. "Amira, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve to be heard. But I need you to know, what I did was not just wrong." It was cruel. And it was mine alone. You didn't deserve to be laughed at, mocked, or made into an example. Your hair wasn't funny. It was beautiful. And I was too blind to see it. When I touched those scissors, I told myself it was just a joke. But deep down, I think I was trying to control something I didn't understand. Something powerful. And I am deeply sorry for that. I've resigned. I've enrolled in racial sensitivity courses. And I've started volunteering at a center for foster kids, many of whom look like you. It's not enough, I know that. But it's a start. I won't ask you to respond. Just know, I see you now. And I hope the world does too. Mr. Callan Layla folded the letter slowly. Her jaw clenched. But Amira surprised her. "Do you think he means it?" she asked. Layla paused. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But maybe that's not the point." Amira looked at her mother. "Then what is the point?" Layla smiled softly. "That you never needed his apology to be whole." That night, Amira sat on her bed, staring at the letter again. Then she pulled open her drawer and slid it inside. Not to hide it, but to file it away. Like a scar that's healed but never forgotten. She turned toward the mirror, gently removed her bonnet, and smiled at her curls. The letter stirred something in Amira, but for Layla O'Neill, it stirred something else. Unfinished business. Because while Mr. Callan had vanished and apologized in secret, the system that protected him, it was still standing. No formal statement from West Ridge Academy. No disciplinary records released. No apology from the school board. And the silence? Layla knew exactly what that meant. They were hoping it would blow over. She started small. 1 phone call, then 5, then 10. And when that didn't work, Layla wrote her own letter. Not just to the board, but to every parent in the district. She posted it online. "My daughter's hair was cut off by a teacher without consent. Not as discipline. Not as part of a lesson. As a joke. We've received no statement from the administration. No public apology. No accountability. If this can happen to Amira, it can happen to any child of color who walks into a classroom expecting to be seen, not shamed." By the next morning, her letter had over 60,000 shares. The board could no longer pretend not to see. 2 days later, Layla received a formal invitation to speak at the district meeting. "I'll go with you," Shaq said. "No," she replied. "They already see you. I want them to see me. The mother, the advocate, the woman who won't sit quietly in the back." Shaq looked at her, pride softening his usual stern expression. "You sure?" Layla smiled. "I'm ready." The auditorium was full. Parents, reporters, students wearing shirts that read, "My hair is not a joke." When Layla took the podium, a hush fell over the room. Her voice didn't shake. "I am not here for revenge," she began. "I'm here for reckoning. For the conversations you've all been too comfortable to avoid. For the teachers who whisper biases behind closed doors. For the leaders who sign off on silence. For the next little black girl with curls too bold for the hallway." The audience sat frozen. Some nodded. Some wept. But the board, stone-faced. She pointed directly at them. "Until this district can admit what it allowed to happen, you haven't just failed my daughter. You failed every child you're supposed to protect." A beat of silence. Then applause. Loud, long, unstoppable. That night, after Amira went to sleep, Layla sat on the couch beside Shaq. The TV was on mute. She opened her laptop. An email had arrived. Subject line, "Board statement, scheduled for tomorrow morning." She didn't open it. Not yet. She just leaned back, heart heavy, but steady. Because this wasn't the end. This was the shift. The morning sun hadn't yet cracked the sky when Layla's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Ping, ping, ping. Mentions. Tags. DMS. By the time she sat up and rubbed her eyes, the headlines were everywhere. Shaquille O'Neal's daughter, targeted by racist teacher. Mother's powerful speech goes viral. A black girl's hair isn't a joke. It's time schools learn that. West Ridge under fire as parents demand reform. The video of her school board speech had been clipped, subtitled, and uploaded across every platform. And Amira. She woke up to find her face, her story, in the mouths of morning anchors and podcast hosts. "Mom," she whispered, holding her phone. "Why is everyone talking about me?" Layla knelt beside her. "Because what happened to you wasn't just about you." She placed a hand on her daughter's chest. It touched something in people, something deep, something overdue. By noon, CNN had called for a statement. By 3 p.m., Layla was invited to join a panel on The View. And by dinner, Shaq's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. ESPN, BET, NPR, NBC. Everyone wanted a quote, an interview, a headline. But Shaq? He stayed quiet. Instead, he grilled chicken on the patio, watching his daughter laugh, really laugh, for the first time in weeks as her best friend braided her hair beside the pool. "This is the story that matters," he said to Layla. But Layla knew something bigger was forming, a storm. And it wasn't just attention, it was pressure. The next school board meeting looked different. Security guards stood at every door. The media swarmed the sidewalk. Outside, hundreds gathered. Some parents, some students, some strangers holding signs. "Our daughters deserve better." Hair is identity. Silence is complicity. Inside, the board looked smaller, frailer, like the weight had finally reached their shoulders. They released a public apology. They promised a third-party investigation. They suspended 4 administrators who had handled the complaint inappropriately. It sounded like progress. But Layla wasn't smiling. Because one question still hadn't been answered. Why was this allowed in the first place? That night, Amira pulled out her art notebook. She drew herself with her curls, big, radiant, defiant. Then next to her, she drew her friends, every shade, every texture, every hairstyle. She labeled it, "This is power." Shaq saw it on the kitchen counter. He smiled, but his eyes watered. "This ain't over yet," he said under his breath. It started with a single envelope. No stamp, no name. Just left in the family's mailbox, sometime after midnight. Layla almost tossed it, assuming it was another card of support. But when she opened it, the breath caught in her throat. Inside was a printed message. Just one sentence. "Shut up before someone makes you." She read it again, hands trembling. Then she checked the front door locks, twice. Shaq was on his way back from a youth basketball event in Atlanta when she called. "Shaquille," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone left us a threat." He went quiet. Not even his breathing filled the silence. "I'm flying back tonight," he said finally. "And we're calling the police." Detectives arrived an hour later. They dusted the envelope for prints, took it into evidence, and said what Layla already knew. "There's no return address. No cameras on the street. We'll keep watch, but they might never find who sent it." Shaq stood in the doorway, arms crossed, jaw locked. "I got cameras going up tonight. Every corner of the house, floodlights, motion sensors, all of it." Layla nodded. But her eyes drifted toward Amira's closed bedroom door. She whispered, "What if this isn't about her anymore?" Shaq answered without hesitation. "Then they're going to find out the hard way what happens when you come after our family." But the threats didn't stop. 2 more messages came in the next 5 days. One slipped into Amira's locker at school. "You're not special. Your daddy can't protect you forever." Another scrawled in marker across the side of the community center where Layla volunteered. "Go back to where you came from." Each message more cowardly than the last. each one trying to break something they couldn't touch. But what the sender didn't know was they were making the O'Neills stronger. Amira didn't cry when she saw the writing on the center wall. She looked at it for a long moment, then handed Layla her phone and said, "Record me." She stood tall and stared into the camera. "This is for the person who thinks hate is going to silence us. You don't scare me. You don't define me. My hair, my skin, my family, that's power, not weakness. So go ahead, keep hiding, we're not." That video hit 4.2 million views in 2 days. And people weren't just watching anymore. They were showing up. Marches began forming across state lines. Petitions flooded the school board's inbox. And someone was getting nervous. 2 nights later, Shaq stood outside just after midnight. A black SUV slowed at the edge of the street. No license plate, just tinted windows. It didn't stop, just lingered, watched, and drove off. But Shaq had already pulled his phone. He zoomed in, got the taillights, the silhouette of the driver, and one small detail the driver didn't expect: a school-issued faculty parking sticker on the dashboard. Shaq didn't sleep that night. He stayed up, eyes glued to the security footage, replaying the moment the SUV passed his driveway. He zoomed in, captured the sticker, the logo. It was the school district's faculty sticker. The next morning, he and Layla went straight to the police. Detective Sanders met them at the door, the same officer who had visited the house earlier. He looked over the footage and nodded slowly. "We'll start pulling the records. Faculty members are easy to track. Give me a few hours and I'll call you back." But Layla felt the knot in her stomach tighten. This was bigger than just one teacher. By the time they reached the school, the tension was thick. The principal, Mrs. Simmons, greeted them stiffly in her office. Her hands were shaking as she offered them water. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," she said, clearly uncomfortable. Shaq didn't sit down. Layla did, leaning forward. "We know what's been going on," Shaq said, his voice low. "And we know you've been covering it up." Mrs. Simmons's face blanched. "I don't know what you mean." Layla didn't wait for her to explain. "We know who was behind the threats. We know who sent them. We know who's been protecting the ones who hurt our daughter." The principal froze. Her hands stopped trembling. "Who?" Before either of them could respond, the door opened and Detective Sanders walked in, a folder in hand. He dropped it on the desk. "Found it," he said simply. Simmons looked from the detective to Shaq and Layla, her face falling into a mask of panic. The detective slid the folder toward them. Inside were photos. Photos of a teacher, Mr. Callan, and his connection to one of the school board members. A secret meeting. Late at night. Unmarked envelopes exchanged. "You know what this is," the detective said quietly. "Your former teacher wasn't acting alone. He had support." Mrs. Simmons slumped back into her chair, defeated. "You knew," Shaq said, "and you stayed silent." The principal said nothing. Her guilt hung in the air like a heavy fog. Layla's voice was calm, but there was fire in her eyes. "Amira's hair wasn't a joke. She wasn't your experiment. You don't get to hide behind your policies and think this is over. The truth is coming out and it's going to cost some people everything." Within 24 hours, the story hit the headlines once more. This time, it wasn't just about Mr. Callan. It was about the corruption that went all the way up the chain. The school board member's resignation came first. Then the investigation into the faculty, revealing a network of covert actions designed to intimidate and silence the voices of students who challenged the status quo. By the end of the week, Mr. Callan was officially arrested. The other faculty members who'd helped him, they were placed on leave. The entire district was under investigation, and Westridge Academy was forced to confront its darkest secrets. For Amira, the weight of the past few months was finally lifting. She returned to school with a quiet strength. She walked through the halls differently now, not hiding, not avoiding the stairs, but standing tall. Her curls, wild and free, were a declaration, a shield, a statement. At home, Shaq stood on the balcony, watching his daughter run through the yard, laughing as she danced in the warm evening breeze. "Is it over?" Layla asked softly, joining him at the railing. Shaq nodded, but his eyes remained on Amira. "For now," he said. "But if this family ever faces another fight, we'll be ready." Layla smiled and leaned into him. "We've already won the most important battle." The door to the house creaked open. Amira stood there, holding her sketchbook, a new drawing in her hands. She smiled at them. "This is power." Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story. Let us know about your thoughts in the comment section. Also, subscribe the channel for daily stories notification.